Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing nothing around you has changed, yet everything inside you has. Imagine feeling so clear, so aligned, so powerful that opportunities begin to find you. That's what happens when you shift into the mindset that attracts miracles. Not luck, not chance, alignment. Most people think miracles are rare, but the truth is they're happening all the time. They're just invisible to the people who aren't tuned in. Today, I want to show you how to switch on that inner magnet, how to step into a state where breakthroughs, possibilities, and transformation become your new normal. Let's begin. Everything begins with your state, not your circumstances, not your past, not your resources, not your goals, your state. Because the truth is you can have the greatest strategy in the world, the most inspiring vision, the most powerful intention, but if your emotional state is weak, hesitant, or drained, nothing moves. Miracles don't respond to force, they respond to alignment. And alignment starts with the energy you bring into this moment. When you shift your state, you shift the direction of your entire life. Think about it. There have been moments when you felt unstoppable, where you didn't need motivation, you didn't need someone to push you, you didn't need the perfect plan, you just moved. You acted from certainty, you acted from passion, you acted from a place inside you that said, this is who I am. And in those moments, things flowed, opportunities appeared, ideas came out of nowhere, people showed up to help. That wasn't luck, that was frequency, that was the power of your state creating momentum. And there have been other moments where you felt tired, discouraged, uncertain, and suddenly everything felt harder. Even simple tasks felt overwhelming. You doubted yourself. You hesitated. You second-guessed. And because your state was low, everything around you reflected that. It wasn't the world working against you. It was your energy blocking what was meant for you. Your state is the magnet. Your state is the signal. Your state is the invisible force pulling in or pushing away the miracles that are already trying to reach you. Most people walk through life reacting to everything around them. They react to their environment, their bank account, their relationships, their regrets, their fears. They let circumstances dictate their emotions, but that means they're living backwards. The miracle mindset flips that. Instead of reacting to life, you generate the state that creates the life you want. Instead of waiting to feel ready, you step into the energy that makes you ready. When you elevate your state, even for a moment, you open the door, you raise your frequency, you become magnetic. Because miracles don't show up when you're stressed, tense, afraid, or doubting. Miracles show up when you're expanded, grateful, certain, grounded, and emotionally alive. That's when you're in alignment with the version of yourself that already has everything you're asking for. This is why the most powerful transformation you can create in your life begins with mastering your state. It starts with deciding how you're going to feel before the world gives you a reason. You choose the state of clarity. You choose the state of confidence. You choose the state of gratitude. You choose the state of purpose. And once you choose it, you embody it in your breath, your posture, your voice, your movement, your focus, everything. Because your body is the fastest lever to shift your energy. You cannot stand tall, breathe deeply, move powerfully, and speak confidently while feeling weak or defeated. If you change your body, you interrupt the old emotional pattern. If you change your breathing, you disrupt the fear. If you change your focus, you change your life. And when your state changes, your decisions change. When your decisions change, your actions change. And when your actions change, your outcomes transform. Every major breakthrough in your life will come from a moment where you shifted your state before you had any evidence things would work out. You acted from faith, not fear. You moved from certainty, not doubt. You generated the energy of the person you needed to become, and that energy pulled in the opportunities that matched it. You don't attract miracles by begging for them. You attract miracles by becoming the type of person who expects them. Not because you're entitled, but because you're aligned, because you've elevated your emotional frequency high enough that extraordinary things feel natural, not impossible. When you're in a powerful state, you don't chase miracles. You draw them in effortlessly. You don't force outcomes. You create space for them. You don't hope life gets better. You show up as the version of yourself who makes life better by the way you think, act, and feel. The shift begins the moment you decide that your state is non-negotiable, that your energy is a priority, that your inner world will no longer be controlled by external noise. You become selective. You become intentional. You start feeding your mind with possibility instead of limitation. You start speaking words that build you instead of break you. You start moving your body like someone who believes in their future. And as your state rises, your life rises with it. This is the mindset that changes everything. not waiting for miracles, but preparing for them, not hoping for breakthroughs, but creating the emotional foundation for them, not chasing the extraordinary, but becoming extraordinary in your presence, your energy, your certainty, because miracles don't come to the person who says, I hope something good happens someday. They come to the person who says, I'm ready, I'm aligned, I'm showing up as the fullest version of myself right now. When you elevate your state, you become a beacon, a signal, a living reminder that the extraordinary isn't reserved for the chosen few. It's available to anyone who decides to show up with the energy of someone who knows they're worthy of more. This is how you become a magnet for miracles. It starts with you. It starts with this moment. It starts with the decision to shift your state and step into your power right now. And that is the moment your life begins to transform. Most people live inside invisible walls they don't even know are there. They wake up every day, go through the motions, repeat the same habits, think the same thoughts, feel the same emotions, and wonder why nothing changes. They blame their circumstances, their upbringing, their luck. But the truth is, the greatest limits in their life are the limits they've accepted. Not consciously, not intentionally, but quietly. Silently, slowly, limits that were formed by fear, by past failures, by other people's opinions, by moments of pain they never healed from. Those limits become a cage, and the worst part is the door is wide open, but they don't walk out because they believe the cage is real. Breaking your limits begins with recognizing that most of what you call reality is actually just a story you've been repeating for so long that it feels like the truth, a story about what you're capable of, a story about what you deserve, a story about what's possible for someone like you. And as long as you keep telling that story, you live inside it. You move like someone who's restricted. You think like someone who's stuck. You act like someone who's trying to survive instead of someone who's built for greatness. But the moment you change the story, even slightly, you create a crack in the walls. You open the possibility that life could be bigger than what you've known. Every breakthrough begins with a moment of honesty, a moment where you look at yourself and say, I'm the one holding the pen. I'm the one writing these limits into existence, and I'm the one who can erase them. That kind of honesty is uncomfortable. It forces you to confront the beliefs you've been protecting. It forces you to admit that some of the reasons you've given yourself for staying small are just excuses dressed up as logic. But without that honesty, nothing changes because you cannot break a limit you won't acknowledge. The truth is, you don't lack potential. You don't lack talent. You don't lack intelligence, creativity, or opportunity. What you lack is permission. Permission to expand, permission to pursue more, permission to want something bigger without feeling guilty, selfish, or foolish. Somewhere along the way, someone convinced you to shrink. Someone taught you to play safe. Someone told you to stop dreaming, to stop trying, to stop hoping. And maybe you believed them. Maybe you let their fears become your limits. But here's the incredible part. The moment you decide to reclaim that permission, everything shifts. The walls don't disappear instantly, but they start to crack. You start asking bigger questions. What if I'm capable of more? What if I've been living beneath my potential? What if the life I want is not impossible? It's just outside the limits I've been willing to challenge. That curiosity is powerful. It's the spark that starts the fire. Because once you feel even a glimpse of your true capacity, you can't unfeel it. You can't go back to pretending you're small. You can't keep living inside a life that doesn't reflect who you really are. Something inside you wakes up. A part of you, hat, refuses to shrink back into the old limits. But breaking limits doesn't happen through inspiration alone. It happens through action. Small, sometimes uncomfortable, always courageous action. It happens the moment you decide to take a step that the old version of you would have avoided. It happens when you lean into the fear instead of running from it. It happens when you push past the point where you usually stop and discover that you're capable of more than you thought. Your limits are not destroyed by thinking. They're destroyed by action. You don't build confidence by waiting for it. You build confidence by proving to yourself through repeated action that you are stronger, braver, and more capable than the voice in your head wants you to believe. Every time you take a step beyond your comfort zone, you expand the boundaries of what's possible. You stretch the walls, you push the edge, and with enough repetition, those walls crumble. But here's the part most people miss. When you break a limit, you don't just break it for yourself. You break it for everyone who comes after you. You become the example. You become the evidence that it's possible. When you rise, you lift oath by showing them what can be done. This isn't just self-improvement, it's leadership, it's impact, it's legacy. And when you break your limits, something else happens. The universe starts responding differently. Opportunities that were invisible before suddenly show up. People who never noticed you before suddenly see you. Doors that were closed start to open. Not because the world changed, but because you changed. You expanded. You elevated your expectations. You stopped operating from the identity of someone who's restricted and stepped into the identity of someone who owns their power. Miracles begin where your limits end. The extraordinary is always waiting just outside the edge of your comfort zone. That next level of your life, the abundance, the breakthroughs, the growth, the clarity, it's already there. It's not something you have to chase. It's something you have to allow. And the only thing standing between you and that life is the belief that you're not ready, not capable, or not worthy. You are more powerful than the limits you've accepted. You are more capable than the fears you've listened to. You're more worthy than the identity you've outgrown. And the moment you step beyond those limits, even once, you'll never be the same. Because once you taste your true potential, you refuse to settle for anything less. Break the limits you've been living inside and watch how fast life begins to expand for you. Your mind is the most powerful force you'll ever possess. But for most people, it's been trained to work against them instead of for them. Not because they're broken, not because something is wrong with them, but because the human brain wasn't designed for miracles. It was designed for survival. It was built to detect threats, to anticipate danger, to remember pain, to avoid risk. And if you let it run on autopilot, it will consistently pull you toward fear, toward doubt, toward hesitation, not because that's the life you're meant to live, but because that's the program it has been running for years. Rewiring your mind for possibility is not about pretending challenges don't exist. It's about shifting the internal pattern that determines how you interpret those challenges. Two people can experience the exact same situation. One sees a dead end, the other sees a doorway. One sees failure, the other sees feedback. One sees risk, the other sees opportunity. The difference isn't the event, it's the mindset behind the eyes that are seeing it. If you want to become a magnet for miracles, you must train your mind out of its old survival code and into a new pattern possibility. Because whatever your dominant thoughts are, your life will eventually mirror them. If your mind is filled with fear, you'll unconsciously create situations that validate that fear. If your mind is filled with doubt, you'll hesitate your way out of your destiny. But if your mind becomes conditioned to expect possibility, to look for solutions, to assume progress, to anticipate breakthrough, then you naturally start pulling in results that match that expectation. Your thoughts are not just ideas floating around in your head. They are signals, vibrations, frequencies that shape the direction of your focus and the decisions you make every single day. Your mind will always take you toward whatever you're emotionally rehearsing. If you constantly rehearse failure, you'll find ways to sabotage yourself. If you rehearse uncertainty, you'll stay stuck. But if you rehearse possibility, if you feed your mind with images, emotions, and beliefs that align with the life you want, then your actions will naturally align with that vision. Most people don't realize how many of their thoughts aren't even their own. They inherited them from parents who were stressed, from teachers who didn't see their potential, from friends who were afraid of taking risks, from society that constantly reinforces scarcity, fear, and limitation. Without even noticing, they begin repeating the same emotional patterns they watched growing up. They adopt beliefs that were never theirs to begin with. They accept limitations that someone else placed on them. And because the mind loves familiarity, it keeps reinforcing those patterns until they feel like truth. But the beautiful thing is, your mind is trainable. It's adaptable. It can be rewired to support you instead of sabotage you. It can become your greatest ally, and the rewiring process begins the moment you stop believing every thought that shows up in your head. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean it's true. Just because you feel fear doesn't mean danger is present. Just because your mind says you're not ready doesn't mean you aren't. Your job isn't to eliminate fear or erase doubt. Your job is to be you. Build a stronger, more empowered voice inside you that speaks louder than those old patterns. Rewiring your mind starts with awareness, paying attention, noticing the thoughts that drain you versus the thoughts that expand you, catching yourself in the moment when your mind starts to spiral into old patterns of fear, interrupting the script you've repeated for years. It's like training a muscle. You interrupt it once, the muscle twitches. You interrupt it 100 times, the muscle begins to change shape. Your brain works the same way. Neuroplasticity is real. Every time you shift your thought pattern, you literally reshape the neural networks in your brain. But awareness is only the beginning. To truly rewire your mind, you must replace the old patterns with intentional, empowering ones. Your mind hates a vacuum. If you remove a limiting belief but don't replace it with a new belief, the old one will slide right back in. So you create new mental scripts, new emotional rehearsals, new internal language. You start telling yourself a different story, the story of possibility, the story of capability, the story of growth. And repetition is everything. Not because you're trying to convince yourself, but because your brain learns through consistency. Think about it. The beliefs that limit you were repeated thousands of times. So you must repeat the beliefs that liberate you with the same intensity. Speak them, visualize them, feel them, reinforce them until they become your new default. Visualization is one of the most powerful tools for rewiring your mind, not because it's some mystical practice, but because your brain doesn't differentiate between a deeply felt imagined experience and a real one. When you visualize success, confidence, abundance, growth, your mind begins building a map toward it. It prepares your nervous system to recognize opportunities that align with that vision. It calibrates your emotional state to match the version of you who already has what you're imagining. And when your internal world shifts, your external world begins to rearrange itself around that shift. But visualization alone isn't enough. You must pair it with emotional intensity. The mind responds to emotion. The stronger the emotion, the deeper the imprint. That's why fear sticks so powerfully. It's emotionally intense. But the same principle works for excitement, gratitude, passion, joy. If you attach powerful emotion to a new belief, it embeds itself quickly. That's how you rewrite the subconscious patterns that shape your life. And don't underestimate the importance of your language. The words you speak are commands to your nervous system. Words like, I can't, I'm stuck, I'm not good enough, I don't know how, become self-fulfilling prophecies. If you want your mind to shift into possibility, your language must shift first. Speak in alignment with the future you're creating, not the past you were repeating. Rewiring your mind is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice, but the payoff is transformational. Suddenly challenges feel smaller because you trust yourself more. Problems become puzzles instead of obstacles. Fear becomes information instead of a barrier. You stop asking, what if it doesn't work? And start asking, what if it does? And that question alone can change the entire direction of your life when your mind becomes conditioned for possibility. The world responds differently. Opportunities that were always there but previously invisible suddenly come into focus. You begin making decisions that align with your future instead of your fears. You start taking bold action that the old version of you never would have taken. You become someone who expects good things, who anticipates growth, who believes that something better is always available. And when you live from that mindset consistently, life mirrors it back to you in extraordinary ways. Rewire your mind for possibility and watch how quickly the impossible begins to look like your new normal. Gratitude is one of the most misunderstood forces in the world. People hear the word and think of politeness or saying thank you or making a list of things they appreciate. But true gratitude, the kind that transforms your life, is not a checklist. It's not a mood. It's a state of being. It's a frequency. It's the emotional doorway to abundance, to clarity, to breakthroughs, to miracles. And most people never tap into its real power because they treat it like something optional instead of something foundational. When you look at people who attract extraordinary things into their lives, opportunities, relationships, success, growth, you'll notice something consistent. They live in a constant state of appreciation, not because everything in their life is perfect, not because they've never struggled, not because they haven't faced pain, but because they choose to recognize the gifts in their life while they pursue the things they want to improve. Gratitude is not the result of a beautiful life. Gratitude is the reason a life becomes beautiful. When you truly feel gratitude, not intellectually, but emotionally, something shifts inside you. Your nervous system relaxes. Your mind becomes clearer. Your heart opens. Fear loses its grip. Stress weakens. Your entire internal state changes within seconds. And when your internal state changes, the way you experience your life changes. You begin noticing opportunities that were always there, but hidden by stress or negativity. You feel more resourceful, more inspired, more capable. Gratitude is not passive. It's power in motion. But here's the mistake people make. They think gratitude is something you feel only when life gives you a reason. That's backwards. If you wait for something big to happen before you allow yourself to feel grateful, you delay your own breakthrough. You lock yourself out of the frequency where miracles live. The miracle mindset works the opposite way. You feel grateful first, and the blessings follow. You acknowledge the good that's already present, and more good begins to flow. Gratitude expands whatever you focus on. If you focus on what's missing, what's wrong, what's not enough, You shrink emotionally, you lower your frequency, you become blind to possibility. But if you focus on what's present, what's working, what's growing, what's beautiful, even in small ways, you expand. And the more expansive your internal world becomes, the more space you create for miracles to enter. And let me tell you this, genuine gratitude requires presence. You can't be truly grateful while rushing through life on autopilot. You can't feel appreciation when you're constantly comparing yourself to others. You can't be grateful while replaying past mistakes or worrying about a future that hasn't happened yet. Gratitude pulls you into the now. It aligns you with what's real, what's here, what's available in this moment. It grounds you, it centers you, it reconnects you with the part of you that already knows you have more than enough to take the next step. When you live in gratitude, you stop approaching life from a place of lack. You stop feeling like you're behind. You stop obsessing over what other people have. You stop chasing fulfillment in places that can't give it to you. Gratitude dissolves the illusion of scarcity because it reveals the abundance that was around you the entire time. And once you see that abundance, you begin to carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You move differently. You make decisions from strength instead of desperation. You begin attracting things that match that strength. One of the most powerful aspects of gratitude is how it transforms adversity. When something difficult happens, most people react with fear, frustration, or self-pity. But gratitude doesn't deny the challenge. It reframes it. It asks new questions. What is this teaching me? How is this shaping me? What strength is this building? What opportunity is hidden inside this difficulty? Gratitude turns pain into wisdom, struggle into growth, obstacles into stepping stones. It trains your mind to see value where others see defeat. Imagine waking up every day with a mind tuned to notice everything that is supporting you instead of everything that's working against you. The breath in your lungs, the people who care for you, the chances you've been GI. Then, the lessons you've earned, the ideas that excite you, the opportunities you haven't even discovered yet, the simple privilege of being alive in a body capable of growth and change. When you feel this level of appreciation, not as a moment, but as a lifestyle, you begin radiating an energy that life responds to. And here's something even deeper. Gratitude raises your emotional vibration faster than almost any other practice. When you feel deeply appreciative, your energy becomes lighter, brighter, stronger. You stop clinging to things. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop resisting the flow of life. And when resistance falls, miracles can finally reach you. Because miracles don't enter a life that's tense, desperate, or closed. They enter a life that's open, trusting, expansive. But this kind of gratitude requires intention. It's a discipline. It's a practice. It's choosing to feel appreciation even when things aren't perfect. Especially when things aren't perfect. Anyone can be grateful when everything is going their way. But the people who attract extraordinary results are the ones who stay grateful even in uncertainty, even in transition, even in struggle. That's where the power lies. Finding beauty in the middle of the becoming. Every time you choose gratitude over resentment, you free yourself a little more. Every time you choose appreciation over comparison, you strengthen your spirit. Every time you choose presence over stress, you expand your capacity to receive. Gratitude is not just a feeling, it's an opening, a widening, a clearing in your heart where miracles can land. And when you practice gratitude consistently, something incredible happens. You start expecting good things, not from entitlement, but from alignment. You start assuming life is working with you, not against you. You start trusting the unseen pieces that are moving in your favor. And that shift alone changes the outcome of everything you touch. Radical gratitude is not about ignoring what you want to improve. It's about building a foundation so strong that your pursuit of growth becomes joyful instead of stressful. It's about walking into each day with a heart already full so that whatever blessings show up feel like overflow, not compensation. Gratitude activates abundance. And once abundance is activated, miracles have a place to land. There comes a moment in every person's life where they're faced with a choice, act with certainty, or wait for confidence. And most people wait. They wait for the perfect moment, the perfect feeling, the perfect plan, the perfect sign. They wait until fear disappears, until doubt fades, until life gives them some kind of guarantee. But that moment never comes because confidence doesn't show up before action. Confidence is created through action. Certainty is not something you feel first. It's something you decide to embody long before the evidence arrives. Every breakthrough you've ever witnessed, your own or someone else's, began with a step taken before the person felt ready. Every dream that turned into reality required a bold move made in uncertainty. The people who create extraordinary results aren't the ones who never feel fear. They're the ones who move forward despite it. They understand that readiness is a trap. Waiting to feel prepared is how potential dies. Miracles don't come to those who stand still. They come to those who dare to move. Acting with certainty doesn't mean ignoring fear. It means refusing to let fear lead. It means standing in a place inside yourself where doubt may exist, but it doesn't get to drive the direction of your life. It means choosing to trust your capability more than you trust your excuses. It means showing up as the version of you who's already living the life you want, even if that version feels unfamiliar. The reason so many people never step into their greatness is because they keep negotiating with their dreams. They think, I'll go all in once I'm sure this will work. I'll try when I feel more confident. I'll commit once I know I won't fail. But that negotiation keeps them stuck at the starting line. They forget that certainty is born from movement. That clarity comes from the journey, not before it. If you're waiting to feel ready, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life. There is a power inside you that only activates when you commit fully, when you stop questioning whether you can, when you stop entertaining the possibility of failure more than the possibility of success, when you say, I'm doing this, not maybe, not someday, now. That's the moment life begins to respond to you in a completely different way, because life doesn't meet you at your hesitation. It meets you at your commitment. The universe rearranges itself around decisive action. Doors that were closed begin to open. People you've never met begin to appear. Ideas flow more clearly. Momentum builds, not because everything suddenly became easier, but because you stepped into the version of you who can handle more. Action creates alignment. Alignment creates opportunity. Opportunity creates miracles. But action without certainty is slow and inconsistent. It's timid. It's hesitant. It's the type of action that stops at the first obstacle. That's why you must cultivate a state of certainty before you act. Not because you know the outcome, but because you've decided the outcome is worth pursuing no matter what. Certainty is a posture. It's a mindset. It's a declaration. I'm committed to this path. I'm committed to becoming the person this vision requires. I'm committed to showing up again and again until what I want becomes real. When you act with certainty, you stop dipping your toe in the water and start diving in. You stop giving half effort and wondering why you get half results. You stop letting your emotions dictate your consistency. You become unstoppable, not because you have all the answers, but because you know you'll find them. You move with a level of conviction that makes obstacles shrink. You carry yourself in a way that commands respect from life itself. But certainty is not something you wait to feel. It's something you generate. You generate it through your physiology, your breath, your posture, your movement. You generate it through your focus, the story you tell yourself about who you are and what's possible. You generate it through repetition, the number of times you show up despite discomfort. You generate it through courage, the willingness to move when your old self wants to hide. There will always be reasons not to act. There will always be fears whispering in your ear. There will always be doubts trying to pull you backward. But breakthroughs don't happen in the absence of resistance. Breakthroughs happen when you move through resistance. When you take action, not because you feel fearless, but because your vision matters more than your fear. When you realize that hesitation is the only thing keeping you from the life you're meant to live. Acting with absolute certainty also requires releasing the belief that you need the whole path before taking the first step. You don't need to see everything. You only need to see enough to move forward. Clarity comes with motion. Direction becomes obvious once you start walking. Confidence grows every time you honor your commitments. And each step forward strengthens your identity as someone who follows through, someone who leads their life instead of reacting to it, someone who chooses purpose over comfort. You've had moments like this before, moments where you said yes even though you were scared, moments where you stepped forward without knowing how it would turn out, moments where you acted faster than your fear. And what happened? You grew, you learned, you discovered strength you didn't know you had. That's the pattern. That's the truth. You don't need certainty to begin. You need courage to begin. And certainty rises from the courage you practice. When you decide to act with absolute certainty, even small steps become powerful. Even imperfect action moves mountains. Even small risks generate momentum. Because certainty is not about perfection, it's about direction. It's about choosing forward over frozen, choosing purpose over paralysis, choosing the version of you who's becoming instead of the version of you who's been. There will come maybe today, where you face a decision that requires courage, a moment where the old you wants to retreat and the new you wants to rise. And that's the moment that defines everything. Because when you choose certainty, you choose transformation. You choose growth. You choose the future that's been calling you. You choose the miracle that's waiting on the other side of your fear. Act with certainty even when you don't feel ready, and watch how quickly life begins to rise to meet you. You cannot rise while living in an environment that keeps you low. You can't think big while surrounded by people who speak small. You can't believe in miracles while spending every day with people who only believe in limits. The truth is simple but powerful. Your environment shapes you more than you realize. The quality of your life is deeply influenced by the quality of the people you allow near you. And if you want to become a magnet for miracles, you must become intentional, crystal clear about who you give proximity to. Every person in your life carries an energy. Some people lift you, they expand you, they challenge you in the best way, they remind you of who you are capable of becoming. When you're around them, you feel more alive, more hopeful, more grounded, more driven. Their presence ignites something inside you. You leave conversations with them feeling stronger than when you entered. And then there are people who drain you. Not because they're bad, not because they're evil, but because they're stuck. They live in fear, in scarcity, in past wounds, in negativity. They speak doubt fluently. They see problems before possibilities. They will always unconsciously try to pull you back to the level where they feel comfortable. And if you're not careful, you'll match their frequency without realizing it. You'll take on their doubts, their fears, their limitations as if they're your own. You become like the people you spend the most time with, whether you intend to or not. You absorb their emotional patterns, their mindset, their expectations. You pick up their habits, their language, their energy. It happens subtly, quietly, gradually, and that's what makes it so dangerous and so powerful. If you surround yourself with people who believe in growth, expansion, abundance, and possibility, you rise. If you surround yourself with people who complain, criticize, hesitate, and settle, you shrink. It's not personal, it's physiological. Humans are wired for emotional contagion. We catch each other's energy. We absorb each other's state. And that makes proximity one of the greatest forces in your life. Becoming a magnet for miracles requires you to be intentional about the energy you allow into your space. This doesn't mean cutting everyone out or judging people for where they are in their journey. It means deciding that your future is too important to be shaped by people who aren't going where you're going. It means choosing to spend more time with people who elevate you and less time with people who keep you in emotional survival. Think about the people in your life who encourages you, who supports your vision, who challenges you to level up, who holds you to a higher standard, who sees your potential even when you forget it, who calls you out when you start shrinking. These are the people who make you stronger. These are the people who help you grow. These are the people who shift your state simply by being themselves. Their energy becomes the wind behind your wings. Now think about the others. Who drains you? Who makes you doubt yourself? Who constantly focuses on the negative? Who talks more about problems than solutions? Who treats your dreams like they're unrealistic? Who reacts to your growth as if it's a threat? These people need compassion, not condemnation, but they also need boundaries because your vision cannot grow in soil that resists it. This doesn't mean abandoning people who matter to you. It means refusing to abandon yourself while trying to carry everyone else. It means recognizing that some relationships are meant to be loved from a distance. It means understanding that proximity isn't about love, it's about influence. When you start choosing proximity intentionally, you'll notice something powerful. Your standards rise, your energy rises, your expectations rise. You stop tolerating things that drain your spirit. You stop accepting the kind of conversations that keep you small. You stop participating in negativity out of habit. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that no longer match the person you're becoming. This shift alone attracts miracles because now you're operating from a different frequency. You're surrounding yourself with people who believe that more is possible, people who don't panic at obstacles, but push through them. People who don't talk about what they can't do, but about what they can create. People who think in terms of solutions, growth, opportunity, evolution. Their energy becomes your energy, and soon you begin to show up in the world differently. And here's the thing. Sometimes the person you need to create distance from isn't someone else. It's the older version of yourself. The version that played small, the version that feared judgment, the version that settled, the version that apologized for wanting more. Breaking proximity with that version of you may be the most important step of all. Once you elevate your circle, something amazing happens. Your environment starts supporting your growth instead of resisting it. You start feeling seen instead of misunderstood. You start feeling inspired instead of drained. You start feeling encouraged instead of criticized. Your dreams stop sounding crazy because the people around you dream just as big. Your breakthroughs stop feeling impossible because you're surrounded by people creating their own. You start to realize that you don't need to push your way into miracles. You need to position yourself for them. And your environment is that position. Your circle is that position. Your proximity is that position. Because when you choose to be around people who are moving toward their highest selves, you can't help but be pulled in the same direction. Surround yourself with high-frequency people and watch how your life begins to match the energy you've stepped into. There's a moment in every person's life when they realize something powerful. Miracles don't show up because you waited for them. Miracles show up because you moved toward them. They show up because you acted when it would have been easier to stay still. They show up because you refused to sit in hesitation, doubt, and overthinking. And yet, so many people live their entire lives stuck behind the invisible wall of, I'm not ready yet. But let me tell you something. Readiness is a myth. Nobody feels fully ready. Nobody wakes up one day with every answer, every resource, every skill, every ounce of confidence perfectly aligned. What separates the people who create extraordinary lives from those who settle for average isn't certainty, it's courage. It's the willingness to step before you feel prepared. It's the commitment to even when your knees are shaking. It's the decision to take aligned action, not perfect action. You see, life responds to movement. Energy responds to movement. Possibility responds to movement. The universe does not reward intention alone. It rewards intention backed by action. You can journal every day, visualize every morning, meditate every night, affirm until you're blue in the face. But if you don't take action, you're just dreaming with your eyes closed. Action is the bridge between what you believe and what you experience. It's the signal that tells life, I'm serious about this. I'm committed. I'm stepping in. When you take action, especially imperfect action, you shift your internal state. You go from passive to active, from hoping to creating, from wishing to commanding. That shift alone starts drawing opportunities to you never would have seen from the sidelines. And here's the wild part. Your confidence doesn't come before the action. It comes because of the action. The courage you're waiting for is on the other side of the very step you've been avoiding. People often say, I don't know where to start, but deep down, most people do know. There's a step whispery. NG to them, a conversation they need to have, a change they know they need to make, a decision that keeps knocking at their soul, a dream that keeps tugging at their mind. They don't lack direction, they lack permission. Permission to try, permission to fail, permission to learn, permission to grow, permission to be a beginner, permission to not have it all polished before they begin. You don't need permission from anyone but yourself. And the moment you give yourself that permission, your entire world begins to shift. The moment you stop waiting for the perfect timing, the perfect mood, the perfect circumstances, the perfect clarity, that's the moment momentum begins. And once momentum starts rolling, it becomes one of the most powerful forces in your life. Momentum doesn't come from big leaps. It comes from consistent steps. It comes from showing up. It comes from refusing to break the promise you made to yourself. It comes from doing what you said you'd do long after the mood you made the commitment in has faded. Every small action becomes a signal. Every signal becomes a pattern. Every pattern becomes a new identity. And that identity is what attracts miracles, because miracles don't land in the laps of people who stay still. They land in the hands of people who move. People who show life, I am open, I am ready, I am willing. Every time you take a step in alignment with your highest self, you're broadcasting a frequency of readiness, not readiness of perfection, readiness of willingness. And let me tell you something else, you need massive moves to create massive results. You need aligned moves, intentional, consistent, meaningful actions that match the future you want. The size of the step matters far less than the direction of the step. A 1-degree shift today can change your entire destination over time. But you have to take that 1 degree. You have to move. Yes, you will feel fear. Yes, you will feel doubt. Yes, you will feel resistance. That's normal. That's part of the process. Growth always feels uncomfortable at first because your nervous system is adjusting to a new reality. But discomfort is not danger. Fear is not a stop sign. Doubt is not a signal to retreat. These are simply indicators that you are stretching beyond the identity that kept you safe, small, and stagnant. You cannot receive a bigger life while clinging to a smaller identity. You cannot attract new blessings while living through your old limitations. You cannot call in miracles while taking actions designed to protect your comfort instead of your destiny. At some point, you must choose expansion over familiarity. When you take aligned action, even one small step, your energy changes, your physiology changes, your mindset changes, your belief system upgrades itself, because now you have evidence that you are capable, that you are moving, that you are showing up, and that evidence compounds. Suddenly, the things you once thought were impossible begin to look reasonable. The things that felt huge begin to feel manageable. The mountain you once feared starts to look like a staircase. And that's when miracles begin to magnetize towards you, not because they suddenly started existing, but because you finally started aligning with them. Taking action puts you on the frequency where miracles live. It places you in the path of possibility. It positions you to collide with opportunities that would have never found you had you stayed seated in hesitation. Never underestimate the power of a single step. It can be the step that changes your entire direction. It can be the step that opens a door you never knew was there. It can be the step that introduces you to someone who changes your life. It can be the step that reveals strength in you that you didn't know you had. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to commit to the next step that aligns with who you're becoming. If you want to become a magnet for miracles, you can't stay trapped in planning mode. You can't stay addicted to preparing. There comes a point when you must move, when you must stop rehearsing your future and start creating it, when you must stop waiting for certainty and start walking with faith. Miracles meet you in motion. There comes a point on this journey where you realize something profound. You cannot become a magnet for miracles if you're still dragging the weight of who you used to be. So many people keep asking for a new life while holding tightly to an old identity. They want transformation, but they're afraid to release the version of themselves that feels familiar. They want expansion, but they keep returning to habits, stories, and emotional patterns that shrink them. They want breakthroughs, but they continue living inside the boundaries of who they once were. You can't step into a new chapter if you keep rereading the old one. And most people don't stay stuck because they lack opportunity. They stay stuck because they refuse to let go. They cling to the identity that's comfortable, predictable, known. Even if that identity is painful, it's familiar. And the mind loves the familiar more than it loves the extraordinary. Becoming a magnet for miracles requires a conscious, deliberate shedding. It requires you to release what no longer matches the life you're calling in. You must be willing to let go of old beliefs that tell you you're not enough, old fears that whisper you'll fail, old patterns that sabotage your progress, old stories that paint you as limited. None of those belong to the version of you that is capable of attracting the extraordinary. Identity is powerful. It quietly shapes every decision you make, every action you take, every limit you believe exists. If your identity tells you you're someone who always struggles, you will sabotage success without realizing you're doing it. If your identity tells you you're someone who's unlucky, you'll look right at opportunities and call them risks. If your identity tells you you're someone who can't change, you'll stop trying long before you reach the breakthrough waiting for you. So ask yourself honestly, who have you been? What identity have you been living in? What old version of you has been running the show? And most importantly, does that version align with the future you want, the miracles you're calling in, the life you envision? Miracles require space. They require openness. They require an environment, internal and external, where they can land. If your mind is crowded with the noise of old fears, old limitations, old stories, there's no room for new blessings to take root. It's like trying to plant a garden in soil full of last season's dead roots. Nothing can grow until you remove what's already there. Letting go can be uncomfortable. It can feel like losing a part of yourself because in a way you are. You're shedding a layer that once protected you, a layer that once served a purpose. Maybe it kept you safe. Maybe it kept you from pain. Maybe it helped you navigate a hard season of your life. But just because it helped you then doesn't mean it belongs in your food too. What protected you in survival mode will destroy you in growth mode. You're not here to survive anymore. You're here to expand. You're here to evolve. You're here to become. And you cannot become if you refuse to release. Letting go is not weakness, it's strength. It's a declaration that your future matters more than your familiarity. It's a declaration that your growth matters more than your comfort. It's a declaration that you refuse to be defined by the limits of an older version of yourself. There are people who spend their entire lives reliving the same identity because they're afraid of losing themselves. But what they don't realize is this: you're not losing yourself, you're uncovering yourself. You're removing the layers that hid you. You're peeling back the fears, the doubts, the expectations, the wounds that buried your true capacity. You're not becoming someone new. You're becoming who you always were underneath everything you picked up along the way. And part of this shedding requires forgiveness, forgiving yourself for the times you played small, forgiving yourself for the moments you doubted your worth, forgiving yourself for the years you believed the lies your fear told you, forgiving yourself for the choices you made when you didn't know better. Forgiveness is not about saying the past was okay. It's about releasing its grip on your identity. It's about freeing your future from being controlled by a story that's no longer true. When you release the old identity, you begin to show up differently. You suddenly see choices where you once saw limitations. You see possibilities where you once saw obstacles. You see opportunities where you once saw threats. You begin to move with a different energy, one grounded in expansion rather than protection. People notice it, doors open, ideas flow. You attract situations you once thought were beyond your reach because your energy finally matches what you've been asking for. Miracles become a natural byproduct of alignment. When you shed the weight of who you used to be, your frequency rises, your clarity sharpens, your courage strengthens, you stop sabotaging opportunities because your identity no longer stands in the way. You begin to think, act, and feel like the version of you who is worthy of receiving miracles. That shift is everything. And here's the beautiful part. The moment you let go, even in one area, life responds immediately. You feel lighter, you feel freer, you feel possibility move around you again. Even your body responds. You breathe deeper, you stand taller, you move differently. Letting go creates space, and space is where miracles breathe. If you want to call in a life you've never experienced, you must be willing to become someone you've never been. Not a stranger to yourself, but the fullest version of yourself. The version that isn't chained to the past, the version that isn't defined by yesterday, the version that isn't carrying emotional relics that no longer serve your growth. Letting go is the invitation. You release what was so you can receive what can be. Miracles show up for the identity that's ready to hold them.